Home Alone by Dre Neors. Bear in mind that this was in late 2009 and I was only 10 years old at the time. Me, my mother and stepdad all lived in a small town in Sweden in a big house. If you were upstairs you could still hear talking downstairs at the kitchen, so it wasn't exactly isolated. So one evening when I was home alone because my mum and stepdad were going to my grandma's house, I asked them if I could stay home alone because I was a typical 10-year-old. I thought that I was too grown up for a babysitter. After about an hour of nagging, she gave up and told me that I could stay home alone only if I kept the door locked and never opened it to anyone. It was really exciting for me. I stayed up really late watching cartoons. If I remember correctly, I was watching SpongeBob in our living room while eating ice cream. After about 5 minutes of eating the delicious ice cream, I was sure I heard a silent knock on the door. I didn't think too much of it and continued watching my show. Another 5 minutes then passed and I heard the knocking again, but this time it was much louder. I was frozen in fear and waited for the knocking to stop. After about 30 seconds the knocking stopped and all I could hear was the sound of the TV. I then called my mum and she said that she'll be home in 20 minutes and she told me to go into my room and lock my door. I went into my room without turning the TV sound off, so it was pretty loud. I was then probably only in my room for 2 minutes. I then suddenly heard somebody not knocking, but banging really loudly on the door. I was frozen in fear once again. After about 3 minutes, I could hear the door lock turn and somebody walking in. There was now somebody in the house while I was home alone. I just sat there in my room, quiet. I then heard the TV being turned off. The footsteps then become louder, and I could hear that they were coming towards my room. After a couple of seconds of the steps, I could hear knocking on my bedroom door and an old man saying, "Let me in. I have something for you." I then started screaming and crying for my mother, and the man then started shaking the door handle. After about 2 minutes, I then heard a car outside. I looked out the window. It was my mum. I opened the window and screamed for help and said that there was a man inside the house. My stepdad then quickly ran to the shed to get his axe and ran up the stairs. The man then quickly ran out the back door and my stepdad chased after him into the streets. My mum called the police and my stepdad calmed me down when he got in. This is an experience that I will never forget. I was home alone by Agastopia. It was in the middle of the summer. My parents had left for the weekend to go out to a house in Cape Cod. It's about a 2-hour drive away, so it's no big deal for them to leave me alone for a few days. My mum had made some pulled pork and pasta for me to heat up and eat whenever I needed. I also had some money to order pizza if I wanted it. Things were all good. The first night I was alone, I stayed up until 3 in the morning playing Xbox. I woke up really late the following day as a result. I checked my phone when I woke up and saw that it was a little past 1. I had made plans to play some street hockey with 3 of my friends. I quickly threw myself out of bed and stumbled into the shower. I take really long showers. Usually when I do, my parents go mental. It was just me in, so I was in there for about 45 minutes on my phone scrolling through Reddit and Twitter. I then suddenly heard the front door open. The bathroom is directly up the stairs from the back door, and the thing is pretty loud when it opens and closes. I immediately froze. Obviously I was supposed to be the only one in there. I waited for about 2 minutes, ears trained trying to hear anything else. I heard nothing. I figured that it was just the wind, or maybe my parents were home early. I simply turned off the shower, wrapped myself around a towel, and then slowly walked down the stairs to check it out. So the stairs to the kitchen where the back door is are pretty tight and walled in. It's essentially like walking down a tighter version of this, but replacing the railing with the wall. I can't see into the kitchen basically as I walk down is what I mean. As my house is old, every step that I take makes a huge creak. I still took my time and tried to be as quiet as possible though. It probably took me a good 45 minutes to make it down all of the steps. When I got to the second to last stair, I took a little breath to try and compose myself. In my mind I knew I was being stupid. There obviously wasn't anything in the kitchen. There's no way I wouldn't have heard another noise, and there's no reason for them to still be in the kitchen, even if there were burglars or something in the house. I was getting annoyed at myself for being such a wuss. I sort of chuckled to myself for being so stupid. I then walked down the last 2 stairs normally to turn into the kitchen. Then, standing about 2 feet away from me in the middle of the kitchen, is a man staring directly back at me, perfectly still, with a massive smile across his face, just staring at me. Now the thing from all of this that I remember most vividly wasn't his face or his smile, it was his arms. They weren't just at his side, he held them in the most strangest abnormal position that I've ever seen. I knew these were ones that would normally be held to the side, but he kind of rotated his to the point where they were almost completely reversed, as well as lifting them up a little bit behind himself. I don't know why I remembered this so much, but it's just the most demonic abnormal position that I've ever seen anybody's arms in. Now, honest to God, I almost think that I had a heart attack right there. Looking back, I realised just how creepy the situation was. But in the moment, I just took a step towards him and punched him as hard as I could in the jaw, sort of slapping him / pushing him towards the ground. The second I connected, I beelined up the stairs, dropping my towel in the kitchen with my heart beating out of control. I sprinted into my room and locked the door behind me. I quickly put a chair up against the doorknob like you see in TV. Almost without thinking, I immediately called 911. I was in tears. I told the operator what was happening. As I was sitting there on the floor of my bedroom, I was just praying to God that the cop would be here before the other guy was. I then noticed that there was light coming from the gap between my door. This guy was standing right outside my door. There's no words to describe that feeling I had. I was paralysed with fear, watching the shadows across the bottom of my door shift in tiny ways. I stayed up behind that door, staring at the gap, praying that the man would go away. It felt like I was there for an eternity, all the while the 911 operator was asking me, "Hello, sir? Are you there? Hello?" I didn't want to make noises, and even if I wanted to move my arms to bring my phone to my mouth, I really doubt that I could have. Eventually though, I could see that the shadow was slowly disappearing. I then heard the slow creaking of the wooden floorboards as he walked down the hall. It was silent for minutes as I just sat there curled up in a ball, unable to even speak. I then heard banging on my front door and the sound of 2 officers entering my home. I finally felt safe. I then opened the door to 2 of them standing there. I almost cried. Nowadays, my parents don't even let me home alone anymore whatsoever. Thank God though. I always check every lock on the house before I go to bed. I still get nightmares occasionally. I did give the police a really good sketch of him and a pretty perfect description, but they literally found nothing. I have no idea how they didn't, but I guess they just couldn't see anything. That sends shivers down my spine every time I look outside. I'm still half expecting to see him standing there across the street smiling under a lamppost. I have no idea what he wanted or who he was, but regardless, it shakes me to this day. Home Alone, happening now. All of these titles are probably going to be Home Alone by Arkham 7. I'm not claiming that this is supernatural, but I really can't explain it. So about 1 week ago, my parents and little brothers left to go overseas for a month. That left me home alone. This is all good. I went to a few parties, but 2 days ago, things started getting weird. It was around 5 PM and I was chilling at home alone when I decided to turn most of the power off in the house. It was now around 10 PM, so I decided to go to bed. My house is 2 stories tall, my bedroom is downstairs and everything else is upstairs. So I fell asleep at around 11 and I wake up to go and eat breakfast at around 8 AM. I look over and see that the dishwasher is turned on. Strange. I definitely turned that and the microwave off. I just passed all of this off as an error on my part. This is when things start getting really creepy. I have some friends over until about 11 PM. We're just drinking, etc., then decided to call it a day. I then went to bed when they left. I woke up at around 8 AM to the sound of footsteps upstairs. At first I thought it could be my older brother visiting, but then I heard my computer turn on, which I know for a fact doesn't have a password. Why would he do that, I thought? I stood at the bottom of the stairs just waiting to see if he was going to come down. I don't know, I was home alone but I just expected him to. Like 10 minutes pass and I go upstairs and there's nobody there. Everything is locked. But the computer was on. How could it be? Now I was a little scared. I go back downstairs and get dressed and I keep my iPhone on charge next to me on the nightstand. As I go back, I see that it's on the floor smashed. I was the only one in. I did a full search and found no one. I still have 2 more days before my parents return and I really don't know what to think. Woke up to 2 people inside my house while home alone. Ended up looking down the barrel of a gun held by an old childhood friend, by Quizoron. Here's some quick backstory. I'm 18. I live in a lower middle class townhome complex with my divorced mum and little brother. My mum was out of state for a week at the time and my little brother was staying at her dad's house for the week. I don't drive, so there were no cars outside my house. 18 years old with a house to myself? Brilliant, I thought. My mum was also perfectly fine with me smoking weed at the house and gave me permission to have some of my friends over while she was gone. This was every teen's dream, right? Well, things ended up going a little different from that. The first day I come home, it was from a 10-hour shift at a gas station that I worked at half a mile down the road from my house. I walk home, head into my basement and smoke a bowl, and fall half asleep with my cat. A few hours later, I wake up with an uneasy feeling. It's 1 AM and I hear footsteps. My cat is on my bed and my dog is at a daycare centre for the week. I hear drawers upstairs being opened and immediately grab my switchblade and call 911. They send a squad car out and I stay on the phone. I then heard somebody coming downstairs. With my bed just being in the basement due to the bedroom essentially being the size of a closet, I'm the first thing that they'll see when they come downstairs. I jumped to my feet, dropped my phone and drew on my switchblade. The door then suddenly opens up. The lights turn on. In walks a man. He's around my age, wearing a backpack and holding a crowbar. I'm just standing there helplessly with my 4-inch knife, locking eyes with the man that I've never seen before inside my house holding a crowbar. He jumped just as high as I did when he saw me. With a surge of stupid confidence, I pointed the knife towards him and told him not to step towards me. Funny considering his crowbar had a solid foot of extra reach over my knight. He then shouted, "What the hell, bro? We didn't think anyone was in here. I'm not looking for a fight, man." I then quickly heard heavy footsteps coming down and a voice saying, "Yo, what the hell's going on in here?" A second man then emerged through the doorway, this one holding a pistol. It's pointed at me, and once he notices me, his eyes light up, as do mine. I realise who I'm looking at. An old elementary school friend that I drifted out of contact with. I had some friends who started to talk to him recently, but I heard that he turned into some radical stuff recently. He was a Xanax addict and nobody wanted to mess with him. That was why I never bothered getting back into contact. Turns out, that's exactly why they were robbing the house. For Xanax money. "Josh?" he said, in a questioning voice as he lowered the gun. Dude, I don't know what to say. At this point, the door slammed open and the police rushed into the house. Eventually they come down and arrested the two. It didn't dawn on me initially, but the cops stayed downstairs to talk with me and realised that I had a bong on the desk next to my bed, as well as roughly an ounce of weed. The basement stunk of weed also. Luckily the cop ended up being cool, saying, "I honestly don't care. They need to legalise this stuff anyway. After what you've been through, you need one." And then we had a laugh. "But I never said that to you," he said. So this was probably the one and only time that I'll ever be happy to realise who it is robbing me. My first time being home alone, by Hal Yayo. I grew up in an okay part of town. My mum didn't work and my siblings and I were all around the same age. One morning, we were all getting ready for school and I stepped on glass. I was going to make everybody else late. I also couldn't find any band-aids and whatnot. My dad took my siblings to school and I got to stay home that day. Score. My mum and aunt went shopping and I had the house to myself for the whole day. I was about 13, honestly. I didn't think anything dangerous could happen to me. I then sat outside for some time in the yard playing with our cat and reading a book. I grew bored of this eventually and went back inside. I was sitting there relaxing watching TV when I then noticed that there was something out of the corner of my eye. I looked quickly and glanced to see that there was a man creeping into the window. When I jumped up, he looked scared, but then he knocked. I thought since he knocked and didn't run away it was cool. He asked me about a beat up car in the driveway. I told him that I would let my dad know he was interested. Looking back, I realised that he was trying to figure out if I was home alone. I shrugged it off and continued watching TV. About an hour later, I heard somebody trying to open the kitchen door. I got a little spooked out and moved into an adjacent room that had a glass door connecting to the yard. I heard a window being rattled with. Then I heard the glass door next to me being tampered with. I was so scared that I couldn't even breathe. Looking back, it gives me chills knowing the sheer terror I felt right before possibly getting attacked. Just after I heard my back door being messed with, I then heard the tiny bathroom window being messed with. The bathroom window was never locked. It was up high and took some effort to reach. I took this as my opportunity to get out. I ran out to the front door and started screaming about having a gun and camera in my house. I got to my neighbour's house and waited for my parents. My family asked the entire block if they'd seen anything suspicious, and no one saw a thing. Needless to say, I was scared and still hate being